Welcome back to the Bold Moves podcast. We are glad that you are with us today. Honestly, the conversation that we've been having leading up to the beginning of this recording has really just revolved around our complete failures in life over the last few days. It's kind of amusing to me that we've been talking about these things. And I feel like we should just keep having this conversation.
Turn the cameras on. Let's go.
I mean, Kristen walked in today basically saying, I'm the worst parent ever. Like, let's talk about that. Kristen, what's going on? What's happening?
Well,
I love it.
I'm the worst parent ever.
Congratulations. Is there a medal or a trophy that you win for that?
Well, you get 3 angry kids and a husband that gets annoyed with you. So if that's a trophy, then yep.
You said you were a terrible parent according to your standards, though. What does that mean exactly? So you're not really probably a terrible parent.
I'm not a terrible parent. My kids still, surprisingly, May told me like a week ago that she was in trouble and I was after her again. Oh, okay. And she said, I don't ever want to see you again. And I said, okay. Great. Sounds like a deal.
Just to be clear, how old is May again?
She's 5.
5, yeah.
And but then the very next day, May, she draws at least 3 pictures of her family every single day, whether it's at school or at home. I think her drawing is limited. But anyway,
that's amazing.
And she was drawing in the car, and I said, "Hey, May, like, what are you drawing?" She's like, "My family." And I said, "Who are you drawing first?" And she said, "You, Mommy." And I was like, "Oh, why me?" And she goes, "Because you're my first favorite."
Oh,
and
look at that.
And I actually said to her, I said, "Yesterday you told me you didn't ever want to see me again." And she said, "I was just joking."
She's 5.
She's 5.
The next, let's say about 15 years of your life are going to be awesome.
Yes. I was like, oh, mothers and daughters, here we go. But to be vulnerable, I've just struggled with anger, and I don't know why I'm so short fused. It's probably a lot more heart searching that I need to do. But my kids are kids. They're good kids. I actually was talking with Pastor Beth this morning. She goes, "Hey, Kristen, remember, your kids are good kids." And I said, they are. She said, you're a good parent still. You just got to remember that and act in that. So
we all have the moments. I mean, it is what it is. We all have the moments. I'm in the same boat. Like both of my boys, 17 and 15, we just waited. Like, I think Jacob was the second to last person in his class at school to get a phone. Like, we were those parents. So you have an Apple Watch, you'll be fine.
You're like the best parents to parents, but the worst parents to kids.
Yes. So now he gets the phone, and it's been like, we're 2 months in, maybe. And it's like, you already see it. It's like the brain rot. He's scrolling. It's like, oh, geez. You do everything you can to avoid that. I hate that about our culture right now, because our kids are just getting dumber because of all the
You want to hear how
stuff.
much more of a bad parent I am?
Let's talk. If it'll make me feel better about myself, yes.
It absolutely will. Here you go.
Talking.
Here we go. So my 2-year-old, we have an Echo. It's like a little screen, whatever. I asked for it for Christmas a few years ago.
All right.
Before Hugh was born. So he's 2, he's about to turn 3. And I would say for the last year, he knows how to manage that thing very well, because I was like, get away from me. And
So that's the method. Give him the Echo and he's occupying himself.
He can run YouTube as a 2-year-old. And
That's wild.
He was on it so much that it used to sit like on our counter underneath the snack cabinet. And he was eating all of our snacks and watching YouTube as a 2-year-old.
He's got it down. He's got the lifestyle down.
I told my husband, we have to move this, because he's eating all of our snacks. He's making a mess. He's making me mad. He's on this YouTube endlessly. So we moved it underneath like all of the kids' like cups, like with that cupboard. And so now he can't like, I don't know. He's 2. Yeah. I would think he's smarter than this, that he can do all that to get over to our snacks and eat them all. But I could just go all day. I've got a lot of work to do.
I had a conversation with someone who will remain anonymous, but his name's Anthony Senecal. This was earlier this week. We were talking about brain rot and all the time you spend on like phones or whatever. Yeah. And he was telling me that he added up the number of like some random video game that I had never heard of, like something totally random. He said he figured out that in high school he probably spent 1,000 hours on this random video game. Okay. And then he realizes like the reality that you can learn how to be an expert, not just like, but be an expert in speaking a foreign language if you give 1,000 hours to learning a new language. So he could have spent that time, becoming an expert in another foreign language, or spending 1,000 hours on this random video game that no one's ever heard of. Like, that's what we're doing. So navigating the tension of that as a parent is horrible.
It's the low hanging fruit, right? Like it's the thing that grabs your attention first.
Yes.
I even think about talk about how bad of a parents we are sometimes. We not rush, but we do a pretty good job of trying to get our girls to bed.
Yeah.
So that we can, have a little time together, Kenzie and I, at the end of the night, just to chill out and relax because the day gets crazy.
Yep.
But we rush them off to bed in order to lay on a couch, separate couches, both scrolling on a phone, not talking to each other, not accomplishing anything.
Yes.
Being entertained by the dumbest stuff.
Dumbest things.
Yeah.
And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with everybody needs to veg. We call that vegetating, right? Whatever. But it's just there's the balance, right? I don't care that my kids are playing Fortnite or whatever, or on YouTube or whatever they're doing. I don't, as long as it's balanced. And it's just the struggle with that is real as a parent. And this is no joke. Raising kids in this generation, it's not easy. It's not easy.
I got to get Hugh to eat less snacks.
There you go. There you go. You know what?
Does that affect dinners? That happens at our house all the time. We sit down to dinner. I just spend an hour making dinner, serve it to the girls, and they're like, I don't want that. And then they won't
terrible.
Eat. And then there's tears, and then there's, you're going to eat that. And
it becomes
I
a
want
fight.
a snack. And you're not going to get a snack unless you have 3 bites of this.
Yeah.
No!
Jake's our picky one. He pretty much demands Chick-fil-A 2 or 3 times a week.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah,
I'm trying to avoid that,
but I like it too, so I'll take it.
Sure. I'm trying heck to avoid that, but I'm not sure it's going to happen, honestly.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So it's just trying to strike that balance. And to be clear, you walk in going, ugh, I'm the worst. I think we all feel that sometimes because it's difficult to keep that balance and just have those open and honest conversations. With my boys as teenagers, my conversation is always trust. As long as I know I can trust you, as long as you don't break trust,
that's right.
You have more freedom. But if you break trust, oh man, that's a long time rebuilding it. Sure. So try to just stay open and honest and give it our best. We give it our best is what it is. Well, that was a discouraging and depressing way to start our podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
Welcome to the Bold Moves Podcast. We're so glad you guys are here.
We are talking to people who do not have it figured out. Congratulations. It's fantastic. I will say, as we've talked about scrolling, I'm going to just play the guilty card. I actually have a video I want us to watch together that I found while I was mindlessly scrolling through Facebook. It was a video that made me laugh, and it involves this idea of failure. Honestly, it's perfect in terms of what we're talking about. Because, man, when you fail, it's painful, right? We all experience painful moments in life. And the fail, nobody loves that feeling. However, the internet always wins. It's amazing. And they have found a way to make failure awesome.
Would you like to set this up so that those who are just listening to our podcast have a clue what's going on?
If you're only listening, what you're about to hear is there's some random girl who's about to create a selfie video of some sort. And she backs into what appears to be the corner of a dresser. And so you've been there where you just get jabbed in the side.
And you just make noises come out of your mouth. And you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah. And she makes a noise ah! And people on the internet have turned that into all sorts of musical accomplishments, which is wildly funny.
Okay, so now you know.
Yeah, let's enjoy this together. Yeah, let's see what happens. Yeah, let's see what happens. That's the original. Yep.
So see what we're doing here. It's perfect. We're using her yell within other instances.
Listen, baby, ain't no mountain, ain't no valley, no matter what I do.
That was perfect. That was perfect.
Oh, baby, ooh.
All right, whenever you're ready, take your time, okay? Me and you, don't be nervous.
Little bunch of flowers.
Yes.
Perfect. It's perfect.
The internet wins. That's all I'm saying. They've learned how to capitalize on our pain and make that funny. That's hilarious to me. Maybe I'm weird, but that's the stuff that makes me laugh uproariously. So I don't know if that says more about me than anybody else.
It probably does. I feel like you pitch the idea of fail videos every other week at Crossroads, to be honest.
I just love that she uploaded that.
Yeah, it's still it's out there.
Yeah. She didn't delete it. She kept it.
She was probably live streaming, honestly. Everybody's going live.
Yeah, it probably
was a live stream.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about something that matters. Let's get into this.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so we've been talking about Moses. Actually, we're wrapping up this series this week. This is the last story of Moses before we head into actually a series at Crossroads called Bold Moves. Who knew? So I have a feeling that's going to go very well with a certain podcast. Just a little bit of foreshadowing that's going up. But when you talk about Moses, what's interesting is that, man, he had all kinds of failures. Like he goes to Pharaoh, and God hardens Pharaoh's heart, and he says, "No, I will not let your people go." And he makes their work harder. Right? It didn't start well for him. He actually leads them out after all the plagues happen, and they get to the edge of the Red Sea, and suddenly they have nowhere to go. There's water on one side, and the army of the Egyptians on the other. And it's like, what is happening? Like nobody really trusts him, because every time he leads, it ends up in what seems to be failure before God shows up. And if I'm just being honest, when you're leading any type of organization as a pastor, as a dad, anytime you're leading, you're going to have moments where you're stepping out of what you're good at. You're having to do the best with what you have, make the best decisions with the information you know. And it feels like it's like a relentless, there's a relentless line of choices that you have to make and just give it the best that you have. And so you're faced always with options of failure, and everybody hates fail. Like nobody chooses failure. And yet I'm starting to learn over time that nothing really gets accomplished in life that's meaningful without being willing to take that risk of failure and overcoming that risk to accomplish things that would never have been done if you didn't take that risk. And so while there's always like a fear of failure and the tension between like what something can be and what it is and the steps that you have to take to get there, failure will paralyze us. Failure will beat us down. And Moses gets to this place as now we know as one of the greatest leaders of the Old Testament. Yeah. And all of the people are going, "Moses, you've brought us out here to die. Like, what are you doing now?" And it's at that moment that God actually shows up and flexes. And that's when the Red Sea is parted. They walk through on dry land. The Egyptians try to follow. The water falls on. And God, literally in front of all the people, all of the Israelites as witness, God himself, without any help from them, defeats the Egyptians and destroys their army. And it's all based on this willingness to step out and take risk and embrace the pain of the moment, which nobody likes. But those are the moments when God shows up. And I just feel like as we talk about this, there's probably somebody who needs to hear that. Like, man, you might be sitting in failure and just feeling the pain of all that is. And I just want to encourage you that, man, you take those risks, you step out in faith. Sometimes it doesn't look the way that we think it will, but those are the moments when God shows up. And I feel like we have to circle those moments and be willing to encourage each other, because without the risk, without honestly enduring pain sometimes, we don't get to experience all that God wants to do. And so it's part of the process.
So like, think about, so to give encouragement to some of those people who feel like they're up against it. And I don't know how this is going to turn out in life. This is not going well. And I don't see a way out right now, actually. Yes. So this story of Moses and God parting the Red Sea, like for me, I grew up in church. So I've heard this story many, many times. Yeah. Even if you haven't grown up in church, you may have heard this story. It's been in movies. It's like an iconic moment in the Bible, right? Yes. So people still have some context for what that means. But actually, try to put yourself in that position for a second. Like you're just one of the Israelites, and you're surrounded on all sides. There's this army of people coming after you, and you're stuck up against the water.
They don't know how the story ends.
You have no idea what's about to happen, and God comes in and does something that was unfathomable. Yeah. Nobody thought like, well, maybe we could just like part the sea and go through. No, nobody had that idea, because that's not realistic. That's dumb. But God did it anyway.
Yes, he did.
And so like, that's just, I don't know. It doesn't happen. Not all of our situations end up like that.
Right.
However, you can know that that's the God that's in your corner.
Yeah.
That he can do that same thing for you, no matter what your life has been through. And you could be backed into a corner with something surrounding you on all sides. And there is legitimately, like in your own power, there's no way out.
Right.
But God has a way of stepping into situations, helping us through in ways that we never could have imagined. I just think that's awesome. To think about that, to consider being in that position, and to watch a miracle like that happen unfold in front of your eyes is incredible.
Yeah. It really is. And I don't think we should downplay that because faith really is. It's faith because you don't know how it's going to turn out. You are trusting God to show up.
Right.
So anytime we take a step of faith in life, it is with all of this that we're talking about in mind. It's a risk. There could be pain involved. I need God to show up because I don't know how this is going to turn out. But it's in those moments of obedience, and I get made fun of already because I say this all the time, but those are the beautiful and sacred moments that we talk about. God shows up and he does the things that we never would have dreamed possible. That's a good point. Kristen, what do you got? You got anything to add to that?
I'm thinking through times that I don't know that I would say that I failed, but things didn't work out like I thought.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically one time standing in church and one of my favorite worship songs was being played, and I caught myself I was in a valley, and I just realized that sounded really spiritual. So
Look at that. You're not even trying, Kristen. You're doing it. You're doing it.
Sorry. And I couldn't sing the words, and I was like, this is my favorite worship song, and I didn't believe it at that point. Yeah. And then, but I knew, because my faith was so grounded, that I knew it wouldn't always be like this, that God would come through in some way. And I didn't know how, because it was so wrecked at that moment.
Yeah.
And then years later it came through and I was like, well, this works too. So that's great. But I mean, look at our country and our society right now. Like, we just went through a huge presidential change, and here we are, like, oh, everything's going to be fixed. And some things are not. Like, that's just humans. We can't do it.
Yeah.
We cannot part the Red Sea. Like, only God can do those things and make a different plan. So those are just what I'm thinking
about.
That's
good, Kristen.
Right
That sounded deeply spiritual. I'm proud of you.
Okay, I'm done.
You really did it.
Done.
You really did it. Let's have fun with this for a second. I think it's always also interesting when you're in the middle of it and everything's going well, and you feel like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to. God's there. It's like, hey, everything's working, and then out of the blue, something just shatters that. I mean, those are the difficult moments to deal with, I think, when it's just an unexpected shot. It's like, what is happening? A dumb example of this would be one of my favorite memories growing up is I used to play all kinds of random sporting and competition games with my kids when they were growing up.
Okay.
We purposefully cleared out our basement. So there's just like couches on either side of the room, and we would play dodgeball, soccer, Nerf wars.
In the basement.
In the basement. And it was just where we had fun. And I remember one night we're playing soccer with like this big inflatable that can do no damage no matter how hard you kick it. And my boys were getting old enough that they had learned that if they tag teamed, they could beat dad now 2-on-1.
Okay.
And so it was one of those rare moments where I actually got competitive with them. I was like, all right, I'm going to try to beat them and I'm going to crush them. And so I went to kick this ball as hard as I could in the basement. And instead of kicking the ball, I, in my bare feet, just directly kicked the floor, just straight on. And I thought I had broken my toe. Like it took me to the ground, holding my foot, just going, just writhing in pain. And to be clear, like to this day, my big toe still cracks sometimes.
Oh my goodness.
It's not right. Like, I think I had like permanently jammed it or something. But it was one of those moments where it's like you're in the middle of like, this is the best. I'm playing quality time with my boys, making memories, and suddenly my toe feels like it's broken and shattered, and I'm laying there writhing in pain, and my boys are laughing at me. Like, what happened?
Fantastic.
Well, this is not how it's supposed to be. And I feel like Moses specifically, God has promised him all these things. He meets him out in the wilderness, and Moses is making excuses. I'm not your guy. You can't use me. And it feels like every time it starts to go south and things start to fail, it's probably just confirmation of Moses' greatest fears and insecurities, right? This is falling apart. I told you it shouldn't have been me. It should have been someone else. And I feel like all of that would come back in waves. And yet, even when it feels like it's unraveling, and especially when we don't always fully understand why things are happening in life, and it hurts, those are the moments that if we just decide to trust, I feel overwhelmed, but I'm going to trust in God's promise for my life. That's when he shows up. And I got to say, it sounds like I'm getting old, but I've seen that time and time again in my life. I've seen that time and time again in other people's lives. Like, God is faithful, and you can trust him, especially in the moments of pain, especially in the moments where you feel like you've failed. God is still there. And I feel like that's an encouraging word that someone may need to hear today.
Yeah. And again, it's like we have an idea in our brain of how we think God is going to solve our problem for us.
Yeah.
but it's not always going to go that way. Like God is going to work on your behalf in ways that you don't even understand. Like something that you might not even consider a blessing now, 5 or 10 or 20 years from now, you can look back on that and realize how much of a blessing it actually was.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree 100% with that. And there's a depth that comes in our relationship with God when we've experienced his faithfulness in that way.
Absolutely.
I know now that when I take a leap of faith, like if I truly believe that God has called me to something, and sometimes it's blurry and I'm going, God, I don't see what's going on here. It's become easier to keep moving forward because I've seen God be faithful in the past. Yes. And so that's why I think it's really important that in our lifetime, we document those moments. It sounds cheesy, but remember those moments. They used to build altars to remember, hey, this is the moment that God showed up. In fact, they did that after the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. They built an altar to honor that moment and worship God. Yeah. I think we're wise to do that in our lifetimes. And just if it's a journal or shoot, now it's just uploading a YouTube video. Remember when this happened? Just to make sure we have those reminders in our lives when God has been faithful, so that when we do experience the valleys and we do experience the pain of failure and we wonder, where is God? We can remember, oh, yeah, I've been here before and he was faithful then, he'll be faithful now.
I don't know why this makes me think about like famous people or important people like in our country's history or in like actually sporting history, create statues of them.
Yes.
And so maybe you could just form a statue of yourself. And I don't know, that gets a little close to like idol worship. I don't know. We're talking, but
no. I like where your head's at. Let's go with this. Let's make it happen.
I feel like my husband would love a statue of himself.
Hold on. Can we pause? Can we have it be the Yukon Cornelius look that he had going on?
That was good.
He was dressed like a legit lumberjack, helping lead worship a couple weeks ago. It was awesome. Okay. Yeah, he looked like a stud. I told him too.
Just so long as it doesn't look anything like the Dwayne Wade statue they recently came out with.
Yes! Because that likeness was not good.
No,
it was not Dwayne Wade.
Likeness is not the word to use, actually.
Yeah, it was a different person.
It was.
It looked like the guy from The Matrix. Who's the Morpheus guy?
That's
Whoever
awesome.
that actor was, it actually looked like
Lawrence
him.
Fishburne.
Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah, Dwayne Wade's statue looks like Lawrence Fishburne.
It looked like they hired somebody to create the statue, like the entire thing, and then hired a 5th grader to do the face.
Yes, it was really bad. You should Google it. Do yourself a favor and Google the Dwayne Wade.
Maybe we'll just show you a picture.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. That's fantastic.
Oh my word.
That's another example of a fail. The person who made that statue. You need a good statue. You need a good reminder if you're going to be talking about what God has done for you. That's hilarious. Hey, so I feel like this is unraveling because now we're starting to talk about Dwayne Wade statues. However, when we talk about being the bold move, making the bold move, I just want to encourage you today. Maybe you're experiencing the pain. Maybe you've dealt with failure and you're just trying to navigate a tough spot in life. Just be encouraged that God is with you, that he is faithful. Yeah. When you feel overwhelmed, he is with you. Keep being bold. Keep making the bold moves because God will not fail. He won't leave you. He won't forsake you. And maybe that's the word we leave everybody with today.
Yeah, that's good.
God is with you. Be bold. Don't give up. He's there.
Yeah.
That's all we got. Thanks for joining. And now enjoy this picture of Dwayne Wade's statue. Goodbye.
Why would we do that at the end?
Hopefully we just did. See you guys later. Bye.
Who's Dwayne Wade?
Oh, no.